I started to feel like I don't want to ever bring anybody into this situation. So preaching didn't feel right for me anymore. Like I didn't want to preach to anybody anymore because I felt, how can I bring someone into this situation that I'm in now? But I still felt like I couldn't leave because I was afraid. But I'm like, at least I'm not going to bring anybody anymore. Let me just like let it end with me at this stage. But I'm not going to bring anyone. So I stopped preaching. Like I stopped preaching to anybody. Like I was no longer trying to approach anyone.
Well, Flora and Pascal, thanks so much for being here today. And also, sorry for all the confusion. It's been several weeks of us trying to get this interview to work. And I know we're in different time zones on different continents, which kind of makes it a little bit difficult at times. But thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
It's expected, I think, because of the time difference, that like at least the first attempt, a mistake will happen.
But thank you for being persistent and like making sure that we have like another chance to express and to tell our stories. So it's a hit and miss and readjust situation. So yeah, that's fine. Thank you for organizing it, and we're really, really glad that we could make it work.
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess real quick here, I'm just curious, what is your guys', I guess, motivation behind wanting to do an interview? You know, because you reached out to me wanting to share, and so I'm just curious, like, what's your heart, I guess, behind wanting to come on this platform? What's your goal in doing this?
You want to go? Yeah. I think I think like the most important point really of sharing our story, it's to raise awareness. Like we are finding now, the more we share our story, even like just among our friendship group, we realize actually people are really unaware of what even a cult and how easy is it actually to be deceived and fall into one. And we are also realizing that there are so many cults that it's really, really like dangerous that because of the lack of awareness people have around this topic, that one can fall into a cult without even realizing. And then like decades later, you realize that you've wasted all these years. So we've been really sharing it among our friendship group and like in our social group and stuff. Like we are constantly sharing our story. But we thought we'll use a platform like yours to like obviously like reach more audience and let them know. And I think in our case, we have a case where like I was a member, Pascal was never a member, but he was almost as affected as I was, even though he was actually never a member. So I think it's a good perspective to like to share both sides of story of someone who was like a member and someone who was not a member, but was still basically having to
deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So I've thought all along that both of you were in the group at the same time. So that gives us an interesting perspective of that dynamic where one of you's in and the other's out, and you come out and you know, you guys are still together, which is great. So there's obviously a story there to be told that I'm excited to hear about. So before we jump into that, I want to say hello to Anthony and thank you, Anthony, for coming back. If you guys all see, Anthony's actually supposed to be on a night out tonight, enjoying himself, and he's giving his time to do this interview. So thanks for being here, Anthony.
Oh, of course. I'm happy to be here. And Flora, Pascal, it's nice to meet you both.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for doing this, Anthony. So we have to make it worth it, basically.
Yes.
I'm interested to
hear
your story. Absolutely. And it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, let's well, let's start, Anthony, I guess where you usually like to start. Just kind of tell us about Flora, I guess, for both of you, where were you at in life? What was going on when you got into the WMS? Kind of where, you know, what were you doing? Were you already involved in a church of some kind. How did you encounter the WMS and get kind of wrapped up in it in the first place?
Right. So in my case, so by the way, Pascal met me while I was in the church, and he also married me while I was in the church. So he came while I was already like way deep in it. But my story, I guess, starts. So I come from a family that moved kind of like from traditional beliefs to Christianity. So my mom and dad grew up believing like in traditional gods, kind of. And at some stage, they moved to the city, and my mom became Christian. My dad was kind of like still, I think, practicing both, kind of. So there was already kind of confusion within my upbringing between you should respect your like ancestors' gods, but like now we believe in Christian God, kind of. But we were like Catholic for the longest, and then we moved to Egypt. And in Egypt, I started to like look for my own belief, kind of. So I became Egyptian Orthodox for some times, and then I moved to Anglican for a little bit of time. But I was mostly practicing Egyptian Orthodox while I was in Egypt. Then we moved to Australia in 2004, and in 2006, my older sister became a mom. In 2005. And I guess my sister was going through like the journey of, because like it was a new phase for her. So she was like working out, like figuring out motherhood, I guess. And she was also like newlywed. And she was like in the stage where she was figuring things out for herself. She was also, I guess, looking for her own spiritual journey. And one evening she was like taking her daughter on like a walk, like around the late afternoon, and that's when the church members ran into her. So they ran into her, they preached to her, and then immediately like she was smitten by it because she was in the space of looking, I guess, at the time. So she came back, and this is my older sister. So she came back and she told us all about it, and she mainly told us how the meeting made her feel, really. Like we now know it as a love bombing. So she was love bombed in that short time, and then they invited her like 2 days after that to study, and like she was like love bombed to the maximum. And I guess because of our upbringing, we had a really strong mom who really like ruled with an iron fist. Is it an iron fist or iron scepter?
Mm-hmm.
So like affection and love was not expressed much at home. So we naturally, I think, gravitate to the love bombing. So like my sister really gravitated to the love bombing, and she came back and she wouldn't stop talking about it. And in my case, I was in high school at the time. So I was 17 when my sister met them. So I was in high school and I didn't want to be distracted because I already saw how much my sister was spending. And it was just like I was just finishing high school and I wanted to start my life, like go out and get into like the going out scene, I guess. But then, yeah, like my sister was constantly in my ears, like continuously talking to me about like the end and all this shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a very long time actually to be baptized. From the time she was baptized until I was baptized, it was like about 3 years later. So I went, like at the beginning, I went to church and I could actually feel what my sister was telling me because of like the love bombing. And it was like something that we were not used to. And it felt quite nice because like we were not used to that much like love and affection. But yeah, like I guess my life outside was still more attractive than this because like I was just finishing high school and everything else looked attractive. So I kept on telling my sister I will come at some stage, but like I'm just not ready at this stage. And then my sister got married and she moved away, and like I think there was a big void left in our house. Sorry. Sorry. This part gets me every time.
That's okay.
So yeah, like because when we moved to Australia, we moved as a family of 5, and yeah, I think like for a long time we went through that journey together. And I think like just that, even though like it was for the good cause, like she got married and she moved in with her husband, but it left a really big voice in our house, big void. And for me, I think it felt like the only way I could get closer to my sister again is to maybe do this with her that she was so passionate about. Even every time I went to spend the weekend with her, it was all she spoke about. And like she spoke about like how happy she was in the church, and like that, like that now she had the hope for heaven. She didn't want to go to heaven by herself. Like she wanted to bring all of us. So I think it was also like not knowing at the time, but like I mean we all did that, I guess, at some stage. So we were like manipulated and basically sucked in. And because it was part of what we understood of being Christian at the time, to preach to others and to bring them as well. So like she was naturally doing that. Like for her, I felt like it's my duty now to bring my family and take them to heaven. But like the way she preached to us, I guess, like we now know it as like emotional manipulation kind of. So like, I love you so much, I don't want to go to heaven without you. And it's like, this is not my sister's fault. I mean, I also ended up doing that to so many of my other friends and family later. But without realizing it, we actually use emotional manipulation to bring our family and friends. So of course, like it was really hard to say no to my sister, because we could tell that she found something good and she wanted to share it. Like she wanted to share it with us. And the love bombing actually didn't stop for her until we all came in. So like as long as we were out, the love bombing continued for her. So until we all came out, and then hell broke loose from that point on.
Okay, interesting. Interesting.
So it sounds like the love bombing is something that you've described as the hook that got your sister, and then later on it was the hook that got you. Can you describe what the love bombing looked like for you guys, or at least from your perspective? Like, how were they love bombing you? What did that look like? How did that feel? Just because people sometimes will get love bombed in many different situations and they don't know how to identify this is love bombing. So what was your experience like where this was occurring?
That's a really good question, actually. So I guess for us, again, culturally, as a girl, like you should serve all the time. Like you should be the one in service of others. But when we were in the church, they would, like, we felt like we were being served and being loved. So they would be like, oh yeah, please take a seat. I'll make you a coffee. Let me fix you a plate of food or something. And like emotional love bombing as well. That like you have this quality which is so good. And like between me and my siblings, like I guess it was the way we got through trauma. Like we laughed at everything. Like we made light of difficult situation by laughing. So we laughed a lot. So they would compliment this, that we already knew that it was a good quality that we have of us, that we love how united you are as siblings, and like we love how you just laugh and like you are happy, and this is so good, it's your blessing. So we, like, it felt good to be affirmed, because it was not something we were used to as well. Like we were not affirmed at home. If we did something, like all my sisters and I love cooking, so we would cook something and would bring it to church, and like there would be like so much affirmation, like wow, so good, like thank you so much. But again, it felt like it's something that we just did, and like there was never like a thank you back or anything. So it was nice to be thanked for your effort, kind of. But the funny thing, actually, the things that they praise us of at the beginning were the same thing that they try to break down towards the end.
Yeah. I was going to point out, for those that might not, be super familiar with what love bombing is, it's not a negative thing that somebody would compliment or encourage or point out good qualities in you. The issue is the motivation behind why
Yeah.
at least this organization does that and functions that way with new members. And the fact that, as I'm sure going to get to, eventually that fizzles out, and which ends up just revealing that it was fake and empty in the first place. But Pascal, I think I cut you off there. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, no. So I had like a similar experience, because although I was never like a member, but from time to time I would go to like a service or two with Flora, like, because like at that stage, to me it was a different religion. So like I didn't mind, going with her and like spending maybe like, an hour at the church and seeing basically like this group of people that she talks about so often. So I would go from time to time, and I would be love bombed as well. I would be.
They attempt to love bomb you, but it never worked on him.
I was the best looking guy around. Like I was like so tall and athletic, and
you look like a basketball player or
something. Are you a professional? Like the love bombing that like on physical appearance. They thank you for being here. They thank you for like all these things. So love bombing is about like taking like as you said, it's not like, it doesn't have to be like something fake. They're not gonna tell me that I have like the longest hair in the world, because I don't. Like it's obvious, but they take something small and then they magnify it. Yeah, exactly. That's the word. So like if you're wearing a shirt, like it's the best shirt I've ever seen. You're like
Yeah, I think it's also like the little things that usually will go unnoticed, they're gonna hype up. And I thought it was really interesting, Flora, what you had said is that the things that they complimented you at first, they ended up being your things that they criticized you on later. Like if you're in a study room and you're brand new, you're so inquisitive, you're asking so many great questions, they're so smart. Later on, those things, if they really meant it as a compliment, if they really believed it, it would always be true.
Yeah.
But in the end, actually, they don't want people to ask questions. They don't want people to be inquisitive. They want people just to, sit there. So like if you're laughing all the time, they're going to love it at first. But later on, it's like you're making an uncomfortable location in Zion when you laugh. But do you like it or not? It's inconsistency about it. So I think that was a really good point.
Yeah, it was exactly the case. Like our unity later became uncomfortable for everyone, because they were saying, "Oh, here we are brothers and sisters. We are not like cliques. Do not form cliques." So they would intentionally want to separate us, because like this was a clique and it was making others uncomfortable, especially others who were not there with their family members, that we should be understanding and treat everybody like our family members instead of forming your own like little cliques kind of. And our laughing became too loud, and like, you will make members misunderstand. They will think you are laughing at them, like not laughing among each other and stuff. So like it was confusing. It was like, I thought you said it was nice at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and there's something that I noticed as well. So like obviously like especially like in Melbourne, so like it's a very multicultural city. So we have people speaking like all different kinds of language, and like it was like kind of like forbidden to talk your own language, like
except for Korean. The Korean can speak in Korean all the time, but
so you are not allowed to speak your own language, but like every time I was there, like I was hearing something in Korean. So they were talking like between each other in Korean, but like you're not allowed to speak your language, your own language, or your dialect. So like there's like this like imbalance, and like these rules that apply to some people but don't apply to other people, that I found like interesting, like afterwards, obviously.
Yeah. So in terms of the involvement of fear in your motivation to join in the first place, because it sounds like your sister was bringing to you, kind of this daunting, threatening message of, if you don't join this group, basically, things are not going to be good for you, and I'm worried for you. And so I think fear, it sounds like, was a big part of what was being told to you in the initial stages. It sounds like. So what, from your perspective, what part did the fear play in you joining, or what was your experience with that in the beginning?
So I think for us, like, the love bombing got us in, but the fear kept us in. So, like, even the way I was baptized, so I kept on dragging my baptism for a very long time, like because I just felt like I was not ready. But yeah, like, my sister was in my ear of, like, the end is coming, and, like, she was talking about all the disasters and all the things, and I was thinking, like, why am I not seeing these disasters on TV? Like, you seem to collect all the disasters and that I'm not hearing about. And the Passover sounded like quite attractive at that stage, because in my case, I had a fear of death, like, for all my life, pretty much, because we grew up in a war-torn country, and, like, the healthcare was not really good. So we saw people dying left and right. And, like, for me, it always felt like my family member could be, like, next. So we lost an older sister, and then, like, my dad died when we were young. So I was always afraid that, like, one of my family member could be the next to die. So, like, I was really, really afraid of death. So and even in Australia, actually, like, it was much safer than, like, back home. But I still had this fear of death, like, over me, like, at all times. So when they said that the Passover not only gives us eternal life, but it also protects us on this earth, like, I was definitely sold. And that day when they made that clear, I said to them, yeah, like, please baptize me. And the overseer was the one studying with me at that stage. So, like, he just baptized me on spot, basically. And like, all these years, even though, like, I had actually attempted to leave 3 times before, like, the last time that I left, the only thing that kept on bringing me back was really the fear of death, basically, because then my family would, like, even though I've left the church, but because my family was still there, they would still relate to me that really the end is coming, and, like, this happened and that happened. And, like, if the end comes while you're out, like, you cannot come to heaven with us, basically. And, like, what would be of you, and things. So, like, I was really, really afraid. So even when I would leave, like, by this point, actually, 2 of the times I left, we were already married by that point, right? So I would leave, but I would refuse to leave the house on Saturdays, because I'm like, now that I'm not keeping Sabbath, I can't be roaming out, like, doing my own thing. Like, definitely God will strike me down. Not only me, I would actually try to convince Pascal not to leave the house either.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Wow,
So yeah.
And
so
that's
fear
something
really
that
took control of you guys.
Yeah. I mean, that's something it's great to be able to laugh at it now, looking back at it. But when you step back a little bit and think about that, I mean, how traumatizing those ideas are, that it's causing people to live that way, where they don't even have the freedom to feel like they can go outside of their house on Saturday and go about doing things that they want to do, because they're afraid that, some terrible thing is going to happen to them. And I think the way you said that just a few minutes ago, that it was the love bombing that got you in, and it was the fear that kept you in, which is, what we talk about all the time on here. That's exactly how it works. Is they'll give this appearance up front, and they'll make you feel good. They'll get you inside the door, but then it's all these fears and phobias that become your own self-induced prison. Like, they make you be your own prison guard, because you accept and embrace these ideas, and then you're the one that's kind of you're continuing to tell yourself this story of this is what reality is, and this is what's going to happen if I don't stay in line. And so you kind of, you lock that door yourself in a sense. And so, I think it's just, it's just so unfortunate that they are traumatizing so many people just with these fear-based teachings.
It's really ridiculous. And since I got out, actually, few months after, we saw like an ex-member that at some stage she was in my group and she had left. And maybe at some stage she will share her story, so I won't share too much. But Pascal and I were looking for a new home, and we were actually going to inspect a house next to her house. So I thought I would just message her and see if she was in the area. And like at this stage, actually, it was on a Saturday. So I messaged her and I said, "Oh, like we're inspecting a house next to your home. Do you mind if we drop in?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, of course." So because she didn't know actually at this stage that I had left. So when we got there, she probably thought, like she's coming to remind me of the Passover and, and all the things. So we got there, because she got married as well by this stage. So we got to meet her husband and we were just like chatting away. And I said to her, "Oh, by the way, I left church." And she was like really surprised. She said, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that you had left. Actually, when you messaged me before, I thought you were coming in regards to this." And I said, "Oh, I thought you would have thought that. That's why I wanted to bring it up." And then we had the conversation, and then I basically explained to her why I left. And I told her that like the video that really convinced me was Michelle's video. But then after that, I fell into the rabbit hole and I watched almost every interview. Then I went to Playing in Traffic and I binge listened to everything. In her case, so she left about maybe 6 years ago, but she never looked into anything. She was still afraid of looking into the internet. So all these 6 years, she actually lived in guilt and fear.
Wow.
And when I sent her that video, she also ended up binge watching and listening to everything. And then she said,
Wow.
the very next Saturday, she said to me, "This is the first Saturday." Sorry. She said, "This is the first Saturday since I left that I was able to like have a peaceful sleep this morning without guilt." And I felt really bad that like for 6 years she went through what I went through in the 2 months, and I almost lost my mind. Like I'm telling my husband, "You can't drive today. Like don't even take the kids." And like I'm pleading with him, like, "Please don't go, because like now I left, God is going to punish me. And to punish me, he will harm you or the kids to punish me." And Pascal was like, "We are not bad people. Why would God want to do that to us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because like I'm no longer now keeping God's feast. And like this would be to teach me a lesson, would be to harm you or the kids." So yeah, like it's really sad actually when especially like that fear linger. Like even if you fight the urge of like I know the treatment is bad enough that I'm not gonna go back. I rather deal with this guilt and fear than to go back to that behavior. And then like you still live in so much fear and guilt anyway, like even long after. And then because of the situation with her, I ended up reaching out to another sister that had left even longer before that. And it was the same situation. Like she's been out now, I think she was out even before I met you. So almost like now 8 years. And she had the same thing. She said to me, like every time a church conversation come up, like I feel a knot in my stomach because of like how fearful I am. And like I know that like when my days end on this earth, that like I was gonna face the hellfire pretty much like at the end. And yeah, like it's really, really sad.
You know, it just shows how different their God is than the God of the Bible, because you think about like the parable of like the prodigal son. When that son like left the father, it was all he did is want his son to come back, and he kept love for his child who separated. Here, it's like as if like the prodigal son left, and then the father sent forces to go murder his son for leaving him. It's very different God. So, and that fear of when you leave, you're going to receive punishment.
Punishment,
You're gonna be, and we all get into this idea about the car accident or cancer or all these different things come to mind. And like, even when they teach be baptized immediately, that's what gets you into the church officially. And they say you could walk out of here right now after this study and get hit by a bus. That example is used all the time. So you feel like, if I'm not here, I'm going to go outside and get hit by a bus because I don't have this protection. And, you know, so it's something that's very, very common. Everybody who leaves has this mindset, and it's awful to have. And there are some people who leave and know that it's a lie, and other people who leave and still believe it. And that latter is so miserable to have that.
It's the worst case scenario, actually. It's really
what you did helping those people is amazing because you were able to give them some relief from that.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm imagining 8 years, however long both of those individuals lived in that. I can't imagine that. It's heartbreaking, but I think, you know, I would just say for the former members who have come out and who have realized reality, have realized what the church actually is, hopefully let that be a reminder to you to maybe reach out to some of those people that maybe you know who have in the past left that maybe you haven't thought about for a while. And because maybe there's some people out there that you know that you could just, I don't know what that might look like, but maybe you could send them a video or an interview or the Playing in Traffic podcast, and or just reach out and ask them how they're doing, because you know, how many other stories are there out there like that with people who have been out for who knows how many years, but they're still completely living in that, you know, as slaves basically still to this group that they've left and they haven't even been a part of 40 years. But that's just how deeply ingrained de-indoctrination can be. And so that's why I think people like you both and Anthony coming out and sharing is obviously so important and so valuable.
And in our case, actually, I feel that I think the fact that we were able to do we're able to educate ourselves after leaving has helped me with so much, has helped my recovery and getting back to normality so much more, because at least now that I know that the whole thing was a lie, it's now a matter of basically getting myself back into normal life while that fear is not there. And I've been reading when I first left, I started reading Steve Hassan book, Combating Mind Control. And at some stage, actually, Steve Hassan said that it's so important when you leave to sharing in public is not for everyone, of course, but he says that at least find trusted people that you can actually verbalize it out to. Because then if we don't admit it, then we are living in denial basically, and it's just hindering our progress of moving forward from this stage. So that's why also it's one of the reasons that we really want to share the story as much as possible. And in Australia, actually, we don't have the platform like you guys do. We also don't have any support groups here. We don't have anywhere the ex-members can meet basically. And because when you leave, you leave pretty much feeling like you are now cut off, so you know that no church members will reach out to you without the purpose, not purpose, the only reason they would reach out to you is because they want you to come back, kind of. Otherwise nobody will reach out to you if you're okay, how are you now adjusting back to the normal life and all these things. But also because there's no support group, the ex-members do not find each other. They are not able to find each other and recover or navigate life after the cult, basically. So I guess it's something now my sister and I are thinking of maybe starting at some stage, because like the reason, I guess, I think our healing has been progressing well now, because me and my siblings left together, and so we've been the support for each other. And many, like these two sisters, ex-sisters that I reach out to, they were the only ones that were in the church without their family. So like they left and everybody banished them, and like they had to basically do it on their own. And I guess they didn't know that these resources existed. So yeah, like it made it made the healing kind of like just like stopped. Like they never really dealt with healing. And like now they are both actually they've continued. I know since we started that conversation, they've continued, and like we are in contact, and like we are all like progressing this way. But yeah, like we don't really have any support for ex-members here.
So
sorry, Jordan.
Oh, go ahead, Anthony. No, you
I was
go
going
ahead.
to say, if we could backtrack just a bit to right after you had come into the church, what was the process like for this to become something that completely consumed your life, but then also, how did you two meet while you were in the church?
You want me to take this? Okay. Yeah. So I was. So yeah, like so I was baptized basically in 2008, but then again, my outside life was drawing me. So from baptism to the time I started like the actual being committed basically to my faith was 1 year. So I took 1 year and roamed around the earth for a little bit more. And then finally, like the fear brought me back. And it was also a vulnerable time in my life. So it was like my first year at uni. I was going through like a little bit of a tough time with my mom. I had moved out of the house by this stage. I was feeling like quite isolated, because like by this stage, all my siblings were in the church. So again, it felt like, I think for me to kind of like unite with my siblings, I should come back to church. So this was when I called my sister and I said, yeah, I think I'm ready. So then I came back at that stage. And from the time I came back, like I studied the whole thing, I think within like matter of like 2-3 months. And then on the end of the third month, I went to Korea. My sister and I went to Korea, and that's it. Like that was my turning point basically. And then after coming back from Korea, like by this stage, the love bombing had completely drained, but the fear has taken over. So like there was no leaving for me pretty much. And then it felt like I was like really spiritually depressed. Like it felt like at this stage I was like really stuck, because they started to basically pick at my study, and like one particular deacon said me and that sister that I ended up connecting with later. And because both of us were at this stage, were like at the second year of the uni, and she basically let us know that like it was a waste of time. Going to uni basically was a waste of time, and that like we're in the prime of our youth, that we should use this energy to serve father and mother. So like the sister went and dropped out of her uni the very next day. And for me, I was still very hesitant, because I felt like it's something that I said, yeah, I mean, I know I might not use my degree at the end, but I feel like something I need to do for myself, but also for my mother, because like I know it's a dream that my mother had. She actually took this journey to give us this opportunity. So like I want to do it for myself, but I also want to do it for my mom. And at this stage, she used the sister's example, and she said, yeah, like she basically did the right thing, and using your mom as an excuse, it's like a very selfish thing of you to do. You want to waste this time, like basically doing earthly things when you can dedicate it towards God. So like I had never left uni completely, but like it changed my mindset. So even like when I would go back, yeah, Anthony, you wanted to say something?
Which year was this?
So this was 2010, like around 2010.
Oh, okay. Yes. They've shifted gears a little bit more lately after a lot of people with your story have explained what happened to their life because of it. And so I just wanted to see how recent that was. But yeah, no, that
I went through all the stages. So first they said, yeah, don't do it. And then later when they came with the essays and the uni camps, they said to me, oh yeah, you should go back to uni. I'm like, yeah, like this uni thing, it's already like doing my head in. So I was actually told to go back to uni. So I ended up going back to uni so that I can do the cam. Was it called the cam or something? But like, yeah, at this stage I was like already established in like my like trying to build career at this stage, and like I had completely forgot about the uni thing. Like I ended up actually going all the way into like one subject and then just like forgot about it altogether. So when they were trying to convince me to go back to uni, I was like, yeah, like I'm already like working full time. I don't know if I wanna drop and all these things. So the generation after me, like they were very persistent with the uni thing. So yeah, like I saw the changes.
So then, so go back. So they had mentioned that it was selfish of you to say it's because of my mom that I
Yeah.
want to continue because, you know, your mom worked so hard to give you opportunities to get to
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
And then
And
they used the other sister and her decision against you.
Yeah. And I said, I mean, I don't know what her story is, but like for me, it like it's such a, I feel like it's such a big thing. Like I can't make that decision. And she said, oh, it's okay, sister, according to your faith. And like I know what that meant. Like your faith is shit,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she said, anyway, your mom is in the truth now. Like she wouldn't care really. Like the all she cares about is you going to heaven. I said, oh yeah, she still cares about like if I graduate or no. But yeah, so that like really completely changed my mindset about you. Like I saw, like even though I tried to fight against it, but subconsciously I felt defeated. And like I felt that, yeah, like it's actually true. Like it is a time where it's like every time I would sit in the class, I would think I could be preaching. Like all this time that I'm wasting in the classes and doing assignment, I could actually be preaching. So then when I started work, and at some stage, so you know, Anthony, how they go through pastor changes all the times. Like one night they snatch one away and the next one comes in. So that like they send a new pastor, and like he was good because he was a little bit younger. I think we got along. I mean, I got along with him a lot because maybe of his age. So he was like, for me, it felt like he was understanding enough. That's why he didn't last for too long, I guess. So the when he came in, he had a meeting with us, the youth at the time, and we were like at that age where now it's like, oh, it's good time to try and do some arranged marriages, kind of. So he had the conversation with us and said, yeah, like you are now at the age where, you know, there's a chance that you want to progress to the next level, basically. And so I thought I would explain to you how it's done here. So he gave us the options. He said, yeah, the best option usually is to arrange with another brother, pretty much. Or you can meet someone outside and then convert them to be a brother. Then you can do the gospel together. And the third option, which is not like really recommended, but like if it's like the last resort kind of, you meet someone, even if they don't come, at least as long as they can support you, like that's fine. And so in my case, the option one was not the option for me, because like I looked at those brothers as like my real brothers. I'm like, yeah, I don't see myself doing that. So I said, yeah, like like I definitely don't see myself doing like marrying a brother, basically. Let me go and do my fishing outside, pretty much. So I told myself. So that's when I went and fished this guy.
You got the basketball player, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I met Pascal, and when I met him, because I could, like, there was just like an instant connection between us, and I could really feel that, like, I really like this person, and like this is someone that I think we'll get along, and I definitely see something for us. But there was just that fear that like once he finds out all these things about church, I don't know if he would want to be with me. So let me put everything on the table now, so that like if it fizzles out, at least it's early enough before I get hurt. So we met on a Sunday night, and then on Monday night we had our first date, right? So in that first date, I dumped everything on Pascal pretty much. And I said, like, I got into the religious conversation very quickly. I said, yeah, like, do you believe in God? Like, what's your religious situation, basically? And he said that he was Catholic, the worst enemy of the Church of God.
Yeah. Red flags.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, that's not a good start. But
He's teaching Daniel's prophecy right there in the spot.
The prostitute, oh my goodness. So then I told him about, I said, yeah, like I'm a committed Christian pretty much. I go to church on Saturday. And he said, oh, what are the worship days? And what are the worship times? I said, oh, 9, 2:30 and 7:30 by that, at that time. And he said, oh, and which one do you attend? I said, all of them. And I also go on Tuesday night, and I go almost every night after my work. And he was like, okay, that's interesting. And but yeah, like when I saw that, like he was a little bit surprised, but he was still accepting of it, kind of. And then during the week he got to see that, because then we were then trying to catch up again. And we did end up seeing each other on Wednesday, but then it had to be like super late. Like I think it was like 12:30 a.m. or something, because by the time I finished work, and then I went to church to do youth preaching, because as youth we used to preach in the evening time. So then we did the preaching, and then we went back to church to do like the final. So like we would preach, and then we'll go back to church, then we'll pray, and then we'll clean the church first, pray, and then go. So by the time I came to meet him, it was like 12 a.m. or like 12:30 or something like that. So that was like our meeting time for like at least few months. Like we met at very odd hours, and like he was still kind of like trying to understand, because I guess in his case he also saw something in me. So we were trying to work it out, like with like really odd hours at that stage.
Could I ask, internally, Flora? I know for me, when I was a member, sometimes even if it were to visit like a family member, or to go with a coworker out for like a meal after work, or to go to a work event, and it would keep me away from, going to the church that night, or keep me occupied in some way, there was a guilt that I carried with me. And I couldn't imagine, honestly, like going out on dates. It was a different environment. I guess, because sometimes they will lighten or like make things more strict depending on the region, depending on how many members are in the church, how, everyone's level of faith, all these different things. But how did you feel any guilt when you were going and meeting, or was it something that you felt like you got the pass to do and you felt comfortable?
All the time, but I still did it regardless.
Yeah, but like, I guess the difference is that, like in my case, because like I was living like a very different like lifestyle, to me, it was like, because I was working like long hours, like very long hours. So I work in IT, so being based in Australia means that from time to time I would work with like offshore people, like from India or China, and like because time zone wise they are behind us, so that means that their day, like their 6 p.m. is our 9 p.m. or something like that. So like having this extra time, like the fact that Flora was busy, like, for extended, like until like very late, meant that I could focus, I could actually do some extra work, like until late. And like, like it became like a really bad habit. We had like some conversation with that, but like basically like I was working like until like very late, and then maybe having like a meal or something like that. And by the time Flora was free to meet me, like I was, also like still awake. Like I had friends, like I was going out with a friend that was like he was working in the medical industry and like as a doctor and like in a hospital. So also his hours like were all over the place. So sometimes like it wouldn't be uncommon for me to pick up the phone at 1 a.m. and like being able to catch up with him like for a drink or something like that in the city or whatever. So my lifestyle was already allowing this to happen.
And yeah, in terms of guilt, Anthony, I guess that was one of the things that I felt really uncomfortable within the church, because like I was branded out of my family as like the rebel one. Like I wanted, like they would say, oh yeah, like she's a rebel one, she does whatever she wants and things like that. And in the terms of like traveling, that like for you to travel you need to ask permissions and all these things. But like all these years I would just go and get my tickets and I would tell them, yeah, like I'm traveling from this to that day. And sometimes they would say, oh yeah, but sister, there's no church in that city. And I would say, oh yeah, I mean, like, too bad, I will have to do my own prayer, I guess. So I was already kind of, I think, known for pushing boundaries a little bit. And but it doesn't mean that it was guilt free. Like I still had a lot of guilt, even though like I felt a bit better that, at least let me do the preaching first and then I will see this guy after. But I still felt guilt. And also another thing that I was really afraid of is, like, as youth, I don't know if you were youth, right? When you were, yeah, you got into the church before you got married. They would also talk about like the sexual immorality. So this was a constant conversation with youth, that basically sex before marriage, it's a ticket to hell, pretty much. So it was something that I had a lot of anxiety around. So it was something that I communicated to Pascal from very early on. I said to him, yeah, like I'm pretty much like terrified of sex before marriage. I don't want to go to hell. And I guess this was another thing that showed me that like he was really a good guy, because he was also able to understand and like work with me on this. And because he knew that I had a lot of anxiety around this, he also adjusted and made sure that we always met in public so that I was comfortable. But yeah, like it was like the guilt was there all the time, even though like I would say, as long as I do the right thing, like I should not feel guilt, but the guilt was still there. But then, yeah, like I just thought, yeah, like I need to, like I still need to do what I need to do, basically. So that's why I guess at some stage, because then like he was giving me all the good signs, that I thought like, actually I see myself being like with this person for life, basically. And at that stage I had made the decision to move in, and I did communicate it to Pascal. Me moving in, it's basically like I'm now your wife. So like if things don't work out, like I would consider myself as a divorced lady, because like by culturally as well, we are not supposed to, I mean, in my culture doesn't support moving in before marriage. So it was something that I had to fight, not only the church but my family as well. I needed to, like I knew that there would be like a backlash coming from both sides. So I communicated to my family. I said, this is someone that I really like. I see a life with him. I'm actually going to move in. And of course, it was like a very big shock. And like my family were not accepting it. Yeah, they were not expecting it, because I'm the first daughter to basically move in with someone before marriage. And on top of that, because they also had the spiritual belief that you are not supposed to move in with someone before marriage. So in my case, I like that's the way it made sense to me. I thought, okay, I'm just gonna move myself in at this stage, and I would consider myself as married. If it doesn't work out, then I'm a divorced lady from that stage.
Well,
So
I'll say that when it comes to the marriages in the church, sometimes the members will have like 1-2 dates, and then they'll be expected to go through the process of getting married and moving in together. And sometimes they're married before they move in together. And that's sort of like how it works for them. And, it's part of that, it's part of the cult and how it operates. However, outside, that's not normal. How long was the process from when you guys started to meet until you had made this decision, which was in your eyes almost like an equivalent of getting married? And then for Pascal, who isn't in the church and this isn't part of his religious culture, what was your perspective of the pace that things were moving with your relationship into moving in together?
I think for outside standard, we had like normal pace still. So we met, and then 5 months later, Pascal asked me to move in, but I was still struggling of like because I knew what I would actually have to fight, like my family and the church. So I said to Pascal, yeah, give me some times. And I ended up finally making the decision to move in like a year, 13 month kind of like later, because they kept on telling me in the church, oh yeah, just go to a town hall, get married, and like then live together from that state. But I said, but guys, like you have to understand that this guy is not a brother. I can't just go and say, yeah, marry me now, please. Like we still need to get to know each other, kind of. And I still wanted to keep that pace because I didn't want him to feel like I was also rushing him into something. But then he knew like he knew my boundaries, I knew his boundaries, and like we just like tried to work with it. So from the time he asked me, so 5 months into the relationship, he asked me to move in, and a year a year after we met, so 7 months later after he asked me, I finally made the move. And when before I made the move, I spoke to my family and I said, yeah, like I know this is a shock and it's not what you're expecting, but this is what I've decided. Like I'm doing this for me, and like I will handle the consequences. And like they didn't have much of a choice really, but they said like it's difficult for us, but we'll still like support you in whatever way we can. And then I let the church know that I've made the decision to move in. And yeah, I mean, like the pastor at the time, like he was quite understanding. He said, yeah, like obviously that's not how the church would prefer it, but it's your life and you made that decision. I mean, like what can I do basically? But there was still a lot of gossiping around that. And they basically would tell the other youth that, yeah, like she's not youth anymore, do not hang out with her, like really hurtful things kind of. But I just told myself, like I knew that this would be part of the things that would come with this decision, so I just have to really just
I was wondering if there would be some sort of punishment for you doing your thing opposed to what the church instructed you to do. And it sounds like it doesn't happen like they're not gonna like hurt you physically or say that you're punished, but you'll notice that your dynamic with the other members, you start to get shunned a little bit. You start to get treated differently. Maybe things like committees you might have been on before, suddenly they don't need your help there anymore. They want you to focus on or a new assignment in the church, one that's less desirable for you and one that won't make you happy to do. Like, oh, from now on you might take care of the kids in the church, or you might, clean the bathrooms in the church. Like they're going to change, they do different things in order to punish you without saying that you're being punished.
Yeah.
So you did notice that. So after you guys moved in together, how long until you actually did officially get married?
This guy took his time. So 2 years later, he finally asked me to marry him. And I was like, I thought you would never ask. So like 2 years of living together, we got engaged. And then with the wedding, because Pascal is French, his family are in France, my family are here. We're trying to do a wedding where we can gather both families, but then it got a bit out of proportion. So we just thought, we'll have a small one here, and then we'll have another like small one with his family in France. So from the time we got engaged until the wedding, was it another 2 years?
No, it was more like a year.
Right. Yeah. So about a year. And like at this stage we were already like living together. We didn't really feel that much of a pressure to rush the wedding or anything. And then so we finally decided just to do something small. So we had 30 something people in our wedding here, and it was pretty much like my family, our mutual friends, and the church members. So like some church members. And when I had said at that time, like I have some invitation I would like to pass to my chosen members, the members I want to attend. The deacon at that stage said, "Oh, sister, just give me the invitation, and I will distribute them. Like I will choose basically." And I said, "Yeah, no, like I want some specific members. Like, don't give me the weird ones, like the controlling ones, the weird deacon and deaconesses."
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I thought, yeah, like there are some members I want, and like there was nothing he could do about that. And like some of those members were the members that I connected with. And like and then he said, "Oh, can I at least see who you're inviting?" And then I said, "Oh, I want to invite so and so and so." But in his mind, I think they were like, "You should be only inviting the leaders so that we can dictate your wedding," kind of.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I was going to say that you really were the rebel, because
Yeah.
I could imagine their reaction, because they would want to be able to control that guest list.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't want certain people to go, because they might get like, oh, I could do this. This might be something I want to do.
Yeah.
So,
and that's exactly what they said about one sister, because one of the sisters that I invited was youth, and she was like kind of like newish, but we got along very well. And I did some study with her as well. And they said, "Oh yeah, is it okay if you maybe switch somebody else with this sister, because like she's youth, we don't want to tempt her."
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was going to sleep in front of this sister or something.
Yeah, right.
What do you mean by temptation? I mean, if she wants to get married at some stage, whether she comes to my wedding or not, like she will do it. And there was a little bit of like back and forth of trying to exclude this sister, because they didn't want her to be exposed to say, "Oh, look, you can actually marry someone from outside and have like a normal wedding," and things like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah.
well, Pascal, I guess for you, like you having been in this relationship for, a number of years at this point, I guess at what point in your story did you start to notice some red flags, or did things start to, about the church, about Flora's involvement and maybe her devotion or different ways of thinking? Were there any things that began to stand out to you as being strange or cult-like? I guess when did it start to become something in your mind that, I think at the beginning you talked about, you just saw it as sort of just another church, but at what point did you start to see it as something more, as something maybe dangerous even?
Not before she left, unfortunately. Like my philosophy was that, and as Flora said, when we met, she was really transparent about her commitment to her church, and I accepted it. So from that point on, well, obviously, I still felt like I was free to say, okay, well, this is a little bit weird or whatever, but usually the yellow flags and red flags per se were not directly related to the doctrine of the church, but more like some behaviors from some members. So it was like more situation based. And when maybe Flora would come home and like tell me like a story of something that happened during the day, like I would say, yeah, well, like this is like not respecting your boundaries, or like it looks like this person is trying to control something, or so it was more like this kind of relationship, this kind of conversations, but no red flag regarding the church itself until after she left, and when we started to dig in, and like when we started to educate ourselves regarding mind control and undue influence and like all this kind of stuff.
But towards the end, when I was coming home like sobbing and stuff, you were starting to be a bit concerned.
Yeah, but again, it was more like the relationship and the environments rather than like the, but like, okay. At some point it was like, okay, as an organization, I felt like the church was accepting this kind of behavior within like the leadership, like the pastors, and like like all the people that are kind of like responsible for groups of people, and by not addressing this issue, to me it made the organization guilty of like being like complacent with this kind of behavior. And at some point it was like, okay, it's not an accident, it's actually like more like a systematic. It's like systematic basically. And the church was like started to appear to me as something that is not well done or well managed, or like willing to do good things actually for the members.
And also, like another thing to add to that, for the longest, basically, like since I met Pascal until I started to tell him a little bit about like the things that were bothering me in the church, it was pretty much like few months before I left. So all these years, I would never tell him anything negative because I still had in mind that I want to bring him to church. So he really didn't know how much I was suffering. I was not telling him. Like he would see that I was really stressed. And like sometimes I would come, like I would sob the whole way because it was like 40 minutes drive from like our home to thing. So I'd come home with like red eyes, and he would tell that I've been crying, and he would say, but yeah, like it's not normal. Like it's not really normal for you to be feeling like that coming from church. Like you should be coming back like inspired and like full of Holy Spirit. Like it's not normal that you are coming back like crying like this. And like I would want to tell him so much, but I'm like, yeah, like I don't want him to then know all this and then he's not gonna come to church, and I still want to save his soul, kind of.
Wow.
But towards the end, I started to tell him a little bit. Like I would tell him a little bit of my conversations of, like I had this conversation with deaconess, and like this is what she said, and this is like what happened basically. And Pascal would like observe and listen to the conversation and kind of like give me constructive feedback back and say, like the fact that she says this shows that she really doesn't respect your boundaries. Perhaps maybe outline your boundaries a little bit more stronger, and give her some time to adjust basically into like after that conversation, and like see how it goes. And in your case, maybe be a little bit more transparent. And then I would try that. And like we know it's not about.
Wow. But Flora, I relate so much to what you said, because I mentioned this a few different times where you have to lie, and you want everyone to come to the church because you are scared that if they don't, what's going to happen to them for eternity. You're so scared about their soul. So you want them to come, but then you also want to be able to be honest with them, and you can't be because
they would not come.
They won't come. If people knew exactly what happened in the church, upfront, transparent, they would not come. So that's why we always have to lie about our experiences. I had to lie all the time, and that made me feel so separated from my family. Because I couldn't be truthful with them, and even though they didn't know I wasn't being completely truthful, I felt it, and it's so hard to build a relationship and communication and a bond with somebody that you're constantly not being transparent with or truthful with. and you're doing it to protect the church, which is so much like an abusive relationship, where like people will lie about what's happening in that relationship because other people, they're not going to understand. They don't know the situation. So I relate a lot, and I think a lot of members relate a lot to not really explaining to the people around them while they're in the group exactly what their experience is. So, I definitely understand the position you were in, trying to hide it, even when you couldn't hide it from the person you lived with and shared a life with.
Yeah, it puts so much restraint actually on the relationship, because then there's nothing I'm not comfortable of sharing with my husband, but like this part became like a part of me that was hidden. Like I
Yes.
couldn't really share this part with him freely, for the fear of like not wanting to
Yeah.
expose the church too much, because I still want him to come. And at some stage, actually, I knew that, okay, there's a chance that my husband would never be part of this church, but at least I still want my kids to be baptized and to come. Because, like another strength that came later is once we had the kids, like that changed really the dynamic. So I was like, I know that he might not ever come, but I still want my kids to be baptized and to be safe. So to not destroy that chance for my kids, basically, I can't expose the church too much to him.
Yeah.
But
And
then someone you live with, and like he knows me very well, like he could tell that I was really not happy in the church anymore, and he could tell that this was one area that I don't freely express, because in all the other things, I would tell him how I feel about certain things. There's nothing basically I'm not comfortable disclosing. So
Yeah, no, I never thought that you were like lying to me about the church, but I knew it was like a sensitive topic. Yeah, but I never felt like you were trying to hide things or lie about stuff. So for the baptism of the kid, so that it was like kind of like the first occurrence that it was like, okay,
oops.
that's not what we had agreed on. Because the thing is that we knew we were from different faith,
Yeah.
so it was like, okay, so we have kids, so what do we do?
That
And then
was a painful time.
and then I said, well, you have your things, I have my thing, which is different. So just to be fair to both of us, like we need to wait for the kids to make their own decision. So it doesn't mean that we don't talk about it. It doesn't mean that we completely ban any conversation about religion at home. But it means that we let them know, and then they make their own decision when the time comes, like with their, like full responsibility. Like the thing is that, like, at what age are you really able to make like these kind of decisions? Is it like 12, 18, 16, 25? Like, so it's really difficult. But I think at least having this conversation in the open, at least at home, and then eventually the kid will be like, okay, like I have more like a preference to this, or I have a preference to that. How does it work? And then we see like when they start paying attention or like being more engaged with like this kind of conversation, and then like we will know what is their preference, where they want to do like the same. I mean, okay, I don't want to draw like a parallel between religion and sport, but like, or music, but like you can tell when your kids are more interested in guitar or the flute or karate and swimming, like because like they are more interested, like they are more engaged with this kind of conversation. So that's the way like I was seeing it, but like obviously,
Of course, it was not going to cut it with me. Because on my end, I'm having like in my ear, sister, what kind of a mom are you? Like, you want to go to heaven by yourself without your kids.
Yeah.
This was a constant thing that I was hearing. And I felt really bad that, it's true. I'm making effort for my faith every day. And like I birthed these kids and like they're my responsibility, but I feel like I can't even convince my husband to make me to let me take this, like to make this decision. So at the end I was like literally sobbing to Pascal, telling him, yeah, like I can't be putting my kids in danger like this. Like I feel like as long as they're not protected by the Passover, like they're in danger of something happening to them at all times. And in my case, it was actually the fear of something happening in childcare. And for some reason, I started thinking of choking, and I don't know, like all these kinds of other things.
Yeah.
Completely random.
It's the thing is though, it's not like you wanted the kids to be baptized for you to win something. It's not like, oh, they're going to be baptized in the church I picked. It's not like for you to win.
Yeah,
It's because they
You were terrified for their well-being.
They didn't have.
And I would explain it to Pascal like that. I'm actually terrified that something would happen to them because they are not protected. And I think at the end, when Pascal saw how much anxiety it was giving me, like he was like yeah, like at the end you can go ahead and baptize them, but I really still think that we should give them the chance to to gravitate and all these things. So I said, yeah, like when we were younger, our parents made this decision for us. They baptized us, and then later when we grew up, we kind of ventured in our own kind of like religion, spiritual path. At least let me do that for my kids now. I give them the baptism, and then later, if they choose not to be part of the church anymore, they can go and do their own thing. Even though I don't think that would have been the case, I think I would have influenced them to stay. So I'm really like thankful that like that happened like early on, before they remember anything or before they go through any trauma.
Yeah, but it's really tricky because in obviously in hindsight, my realization was that yes, my parents made the decision on my behalf when I was a kid, like a few months old, obviously, or a year old. But that's pretty much what kept me from getting in the cult, because the way like my faith and the way like I saw what like a healthy religious organization was doing and the way they were behaving, and like the gap between this and you know the WMSCOG or like any like controlling organization like kept me like away, kind of like, because like I was observing, like we talk about like red flags or yellow flag and whatever, but from some of the initial conversations that I had, because one day like I went attend the service, and then it was just before lunchtime, so we stayed after the service for lunch or coffee or snacks or whatever, and then one of the church members took me apart to have a conversation with me and say, yeah. So basically the conversation was like, your religion. So he was telling me that my religion was bad, that I was like in the wrong, and that they were in the right, and that I should stop everything, and that like basically I was unknowingly worshiping like Satan or whatever, or, you know. So like, so I'm like, okay, like I come in peace with you. I'm not trying to convince you of anything and stuff. And now you are attacking my belief and my, you know, my kind of like my faith upbringing and my relationship with God. So like it didn't go well, and yeah. So I think so that was like one of the kind of like yellow flags, but like again, it was one person. It was not like from my viewpoint, it was not like something systemic in the organization. So it's not only later that I found out that okay, so the Catholic religion was considered the great prostitute, and I was like, but it was not like the right approach, like to me. And they tried also like science, or they tried to talk about science or whatever. Like
So with him, first they said, yeah, just try to invite him to come. And when I was inviting him, and then he had that conversation with that gypsy name, who later told me later, yeah, like pretty much I lose hope on this guy because of that conversation. And
Good
then
for you.
yeah, they started to tell me to just use your preaching practice opportunities. Jordan, I'm sure you are familiar with this by now. We had the books where we we practice our preaching so that we can go and practice to other people. So they said, because I said, yeah, I can't even have a conversation without like turning it into a fight with this guy. So they said, oh, sister, you don't need to do that. Just preach practice. Just tell him that you have assignments and preach practice with him. So then I would come to him, I would say, yeah, I have a subject that I need to practice. Can I practice it to you, in hope of, towards the end of the subject, he would be like, oh, my heart is touched. Take me to the church to be baptized. But at the end of the study, he's just like critiquing my style, basically. You are a little bit too fast. Don't mention this verse so quickly. So at some stage, I went back to them and I said, guys, like, I can't win with this guy. Like, somebody take him off my hand and study, because I can't anymore. And then they started to tell me, use basically your weapon as a wife, like pretty much like cook his favorite meal and like soap, and let him know that for you to prove my love, you need to be baptized. But like for me, it really felt like manipulating. And I said, I can't do that. It's not the type of relationship we have. It feels like for me to do that, basically, like for me, I know inside I felt like it was a deception. And I said that, yeah, like I don't really feel comfortable doing this. And she said, oh, but like to save his soul, is there something that you shouldn't do, basically? Like pretty much like soap to him and let him know that if he really loves you, he would come and be baptized. But I said to that deaconess, I don't actually feel like he needs to prove his love to me, because I know he loves me. I mean, we've already gone through the stages of where I wanted to see signs whether this person loves me or not, and I know he loves me. I do not need to test his love at this stage, especially this way. For me, it felt like it's not something I want to bring into my marriage, and I was just not comfortable doing it. So she kept on suggesting it, and towards the end, just to lay her off, I said, yeah, like I'm doing it and it's not working, but like I didn't feel comfortable doing that.
Well, it's a benefit to the church if he were a member, because the way that you see a married couple in the church operate, very different. That would allow you both to always be at the church at the same time. And then it becomes like an accountability thing. One person can't leave without the other person having a big influence of trying to pull them back. It would cause a lot of rifts. So, to establish a married couple, you get more of their time, you get more of their resources, you get like everything for the church. And that's why it's so beneficial for them to marry in the church, because then you have that person who's watching you. You have a spy in your house. You have all these different things that like will benefit the church. You never leave the church. Your church comes home with you. And then the other thing with the children is now it becomes something where they have control over you, saying, well, you have to stay, because what about the souls of your children? What about, they use different family members. They try to bring it in order to build this power over you. Now, I mean, those are at least the benefits. I don't think that they're sitting there like, and if I got this member, I could do this to that person, but that's the result. And I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, but that's definitely the benefit that they reap, kind of manipulating you in order to bring these people in.
Right.
It is intentional.
Yeah.
I believe it is, but I don't want to, it could be a side effect.
Yeah. And I think because like once we had the kids, I was now stay at home. So I left my full-time job. And although I was still tithing, from our income, but it's not as much as if he was to tithe his full income. So for me, towards the end, it felt like they were really trying to get him in for his tithing. And like when that was not working, they started to basically pressure me to tithe a little bit more. But I was telling them like, yeah, like I mean, I can't do that, because like for me, the more money I dedicate, the more I'm taking away basically from like our budget, which means actually for him to cover what I'm giving away, he would need to make more, he would need to work more. And this is time away from his kids. And like, I don't want to do that. Like, if anything, actually, I want to minimize the time he spent away from his kids. And then she told me in that conversation that I was taking away his blessing. Like, he's trying, like, God is trying to give him a chance to be blessed, but I was now blocking that blessing. But I said, yeah, like I'm not blocking the blessing. I'm just trying to minimize the time that my husband can spend away from his kids, because like for our family now, I mean, for like my kids can spend this much time with me because of the sacrifice that he's putting. So it's already an understanding between us. Like, this is
God.
yeah.
They had their hands in his pocket before he was even like a
Yeah,
member of
yeah.
the church.
Wow.
So yeah, like it really started to feel towards the end that they were really after saving him, like pretending to save him, because they wanted, they
Because he
wanted
was
him
the source of the money.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like by this point, like I was too tired, like I was too involved with the kids at home, so I was no longer bringing the tithe that I was bringing before. But I also didn't have much time to preach as before. So before I was bringing my full tithing, but I also had so much time to dedicate to the church. So in a way, I guess they thought of me as like a useless member. They were like, at least let us get this member that we can try to get the full tithe. And maybe if he can become our members, he can leave this lady at home with the kids, perhaps, and then come and preach even on top of the offerings. So he became more valuable in their eyes in that time than me as a member.
Wow. That's terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
So then what were the things that you, Flora, began to see that made you begin to think differently about everything?
That's another really good question. So many. I guess it was like a pile up of small things. So at some stage, like Pascal and I were talking about like starting a family. And so at that stage, I think we became like consciously, we were like learning. So like we started reading books, we started listening to podcasts. And I guess because we were in the learning phase, our mind was like more open, and like I feel like this opened my mind, and I started to see things different, because I felt like I was really living in a box. So I started to consider different perspective, kind of. So from that stage, I think my mind was really like starting to open up. And then like we had the children, and of course, like for me, like it was really the turning point. I started to really tell myself like I can't actually see my daughter going through the same thing at some stage that I've already gone through in my youth time. So like was secretly like hoping that, I don't know, maybe the end should come before she even reached that time, because I don't want her to go through that.
Doesn't
And
that say a lot about the experience of being in this church, that you so desperately want your children to be in it, but you don't want them to have to experience it. You want them in it so that they don't have to burn for eternity, but you dread what they're going to have to deal with and experience actually being in the church, which is just
that I even hope
if that doesn't say everything.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And the sad thing, Jordan, like Pascal and I would sit and would like talk about like our kids' future, and he would talk about like their wedding and what we should get them as a gift, and what jewelries we should pick for them. But I would not even allow myself to go there, because I didn't think we would even be here by the time our girls are old enough to be married. So like I limit the future of my kids in my mind so much. like when he would even talk about like we should start to look into these high schools and read about their curriculums and things, I would think in my mind, I would tell him, oh yeah, we should do that. But in my mind, I'm like, what's the point? Because we're not going to be here by the time they're in high school.
Like I think that's the most dangerous aspect of this whole thing, because now you're no longer future oriented. Like there's no plans like long term and stuff, like it's day by day. So you do what you have to do today, and then tomorrow when you wake up, you do what you have to do that day. There's no power anymore in your present, because you are not trying to build anything. You're not trying to grow anything, like including yourself. You're not trying to
exactly.
So it's you're like completely stuck in that cycle, like every day, and like you just do like, oh, my preaching practice, oh, my getting like this thing and doing my tithing and like all this kind of stuff. But you're not like making plans for the long term, because it's like like like
what's
the end is near. Like we just need to pray every day and making sure that we are part of the 144,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
So the personal development journey that we started in preparation of having kids at the time, like without even realizing, started to really open my mind. So I started to think differently a little bit. And but I still strongly believe that this is the way, the truth, and life, kind of. But I started to feel that I should at least like communicate my boundaries. I should communicate my feelings to people. So it was starting to help my interpersonal skills as well. And I think in a way it was helping me to get back to my previous person, like that I had lost in the cult, because like they ship down on your identity over the years, so then you no longer really know like who you are, pretty much. So I feel like the fact that I was in that headspace, I started to get back a little bit into my old self. And by this point, we were then now making like mutual friends in between us, and I started to see like what healthy relationships and what healthy people look like. Because like I guess for me, I almost never had any healthy relationship to compare what like the relationships in the church with. Like as I said before, like I think the dynamic in our home was a little bit unhealthy at times, and I didn't have like really good example of like healthy individuals like growing up. And then like we went into the church and the whole thing was unhealthy, so I didn't have point of reference to compare anything with. So like now that we had these mutual friends that like they look like like good human being, I started to feel like it doesn't really make sense that these people are not going to go to heaven just because they didn't keep the Passover, and I'm going because like I kept the Passover. So it didn't really make sense. And plus, like my husband was always like just like a solid, healthy person that was always there. And like I could see actually how he respects himself as a human being, how he treats our family and friends. And it didn't really make sense to me that like he's not going to go to heaven just because he doesn't keep the Passover. So like these things, like I think I started to think a little bit differently than before, because before I would think it doesn't matter what you do, like what good you do in the world, like it's just physical things. As long as you don't keep the Passover, you're not going to heaven, basically. But I started to think a little bit differently, but I still believe that like the church was the truth. And then during the pregnancy, I was just going through, I guess, like the normal hormonal imbalance of the pregnancies. And during that time, because as you were saying before, Anthony, part of the punishment, like I was already starting to be punished as soon as I decided to meet someone and marry them outside. These small punishments were continuing. So by the time actually I had given birth, I felt completely isolated, like by the church members. But not only by the church members, they started to get into between us as a family as well. So like at this stage, I was having like lots of disagreement with my family. So by the time I gave birth, I was almost not speaking to any of my family members. And I had left as well by that stage. I had left the church for a little bit because it just felt like it was just too much towards the end of my pregnancy. There was like too much like small punishment in the church, and they made it feel like I was even a danger to my family spiritually, because as long as they were like connected to me, there's a chance that I could drag them out, kind of. So I would go to church and I would just feel like completely isolated. Like I would try to speak to one of my siblings and someone will come and snatch them away, or someone will come and interrupt the conversation. And yeah, so I had left shortly after I gave birth to my first daughter. And then by this stage, I was completely like isolated from everybody, including my family.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and that's when like kind of like the magic happens, because
it's this magic you are talking about is after Cleo.
Yeah.
You're about to talk about the YouTube magic?
Yeah.
No, it's not yet. I'll let you come back to that magic.
No, it was before Cleo.
No, like I left after Cleo was born, maybe.
No, you left after Cleo was born. But like, it was during COVID, because like there was no, because Cleo was, when Cleo was born,
Yeah.
COVID was finishing. So they were starting to open again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was before that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to his magic in a second. Yeah, so I had left and then I gave birth, and then again, yeah, like they used the point that like now you have a child, it's really important that you save that child and all this. And then me and Pascal were getting into like these conversations, and like I finally baptized the daughter kind of against his will, but I did it anyway. And then so I had come back for like the baptism, like they like towards, because the Passover was coming and my family were now all of a sudden in contact with me again. And then like I was brought up back basically just shortly before the Passover. So me and my daughter were able to keep the Passover there. And then like after that, I tried to manage like studying here and there, like attending here and there. Like I was never able to attend like full Sabbath anymore, because I still felt like, I mean, to us, like Pascal is a very hands-on dad. So like it didn't feel right to me that I just take the kid away and spend the whole time there on Saturday. And they would say, oh yeah, like you guys spending time here, you and the daughter spending time here, it's time for himself, he can go and do whatever he wants. But I'm like, yeah, but part of how he wants to spend his day is to spend time with his daughter, because it's like the weekend. So yeah, like that was that. And then I fell pregnant with my second child. And before this, so in between we had a miscarriage, and I called one of the deaconess in the hospital and I told her that I had a miscarriage, and she said, thanks to God. And I said, what do you mean, thanks to God? Like I just lost a baby. And she said, oh, sister, I mean, thanks to God that you are okay at least. But yeah, like that was really hurtful for me. And then a few months later, I fell pregnant with the second daughter. And when I told her the news, she said, oh my gosh, again. And I was like, is this lady paying me a child support or something? And I don't know.
Oh, that's...
But yeah, like
Wow.
it felt so, I think these two incidents like felt so wrong for me. And it was by the same lady that was like my group leader at that point. And it felt so wrong. I started to feel like I don't want to ever bring anybody into this situation. So preaching didn't feel right for me anymore. Like I didn't want to preach to anybody anymore, because I felt, how can I bring someone into this situation that I'm in now? But I still felt like I couldn't leave because I was afraid. But I'm like, at least I'm not going to bring anybody anymore. Let me just like let it end with me at this stage. But I'm not going to bring anyone. So I stopped preaching. Like I stopped preaching to anybody. Like I was no longer trying to approach anyone. And then that was already like a conflict in me, because I know that it's part of my duty. But I'm like, yeah, but like I can't do it anymore. If God's going to punish me for this, then let it be. But like I'm not going to bring anybody into this situation anymore. And then I went through the pregnancy, and then I had the child, and it seemed like the family conflict always happened during the pregnancy. And because I knew how the church felt about the kids, because they knew that the kids took your time, it always felt very uncomfortable for me whenever I needed to announce to my family that I was pregnant. It felt like I was going to them with so much fear of what they would say, because I know in the back of the mind they're thinking, why are you continuing to have kids when the end is coming, kind of. So like a news that it's a happy news usually to many families became for me like so much anxiety. Like I would almost wait until they can see my belly. And then I'd be like, oops, I'm pregnant again. So yeah, like I started to feel like it's really sad that this is the situation. And so towards the end of the pregnancy with my younger child, basically, I was not fully like cut off from my family, but like the communication was here and there, kind of. So when I went into labor on Friday night, and like I was crying to my husband because I said, because I know like nobody's going to be here for me from my family tomorrow, because it's on Sabbath. But even if they were to offer, like I feel like I can't accept it, because like it's Sabbath. How can I want them to come and support me during like when they can, like when they should be in the church, pretty much. And the labor ended up going over Saturday and into Sunday. So on a Sunday, on Saturday night, my younger sister had already decided that she was going to come, and because we had a home birth, so we were at home. So my younger sister had decided to come on Sunday to support us, basically. And so here in Australia, they have like the Sunday full of activities for youth, because my younger sister's youth. So they said like they were going around trying to get everybody's schedule. And she said, oh yeah, I'm not able to come tomorrow. And they obviously said to her, why? And she said, oh, I'm going to go to my sister because she's in labor and I'm going to help her. And he said to her, sister, do not support those who are not working for God. And my sister was like, yeah, it's understandable, but I need to go and help her regardless. So my sister ended up coming on Sunday, but then yeah, like he kept on messaging her, when are you gonna come? We are preaching here, we are preaching there. So like for me, it even I felt guilt that I was taking my sister away from her activity. I'm like, well, I'm destroying my own faith, but on top of this, I'm even like now affecting my.
Yeah, she's gonna get punished too.
Yeah,
she's gonna get mistreated, and for making that choice.
Yeah. So shortly after, so I think all these things piled up. And after so I gave birth in February, and Passover was in April. So I drove to the church with my two daughters. Like my little one was only 2 months old, so she was like a newborn at this stage even. And as I was preparing to go there, my group leader calls me and she said, oh, can you pick up this other sister? Like that's in your area, basically. So now I have a toddler, a newborn, like I need to drive, the trip, it's 50 minutes, but because I knew it's a Passover, and it's also like the Passover is usually done in the evening, and here it's a rush hour for us. So the whole trip ended up taking us 1 hour and a half to get there, because I needed to stop and pick up this sister, and then I needed to give myself just enough time. So we're driving there. My newborn is screaming her lungs out. Like I'm stopping in the freeway. I'm breastfeeding the baby. The sister's stressed. She's stressing me out. Like the whole trip was really, really stressful. But anyway, we got there at the end and we kept the Passover. And then we got back, and Anthony, if you still remember, it usually is a Passover, and then the very next day is unleavened bread. Mm-hmm. So it's the very next day, like you go for the 5, the 9, and blah, 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 all this. So they were expecting me to do the very next day, like the 9 a.m. I said to them, I will see how I go, because like my child is really, really stressed. So she's telling me this as I'm going into the car, and she's telling me, oh, can you pick up this sister again tomorrow? So I said to her, Deaconess, let me just put my kids in the car. Like I told you I will see how I go tomorrow morning. But like at this stage, like I'm feeling guilty at the amount of like the stress my child had to go through. Like I'm still feeling stressed for her. She's stressed. She's already like crying as I'm putting her in the car. So I said to her, yeah, please give me some times. Let me, like, I would drop the sister off tonight and I will see how I go. But like, I don't think I can make it for the 9 o'clock. I might attempt the 2:30, but I'm not too sure. So she like continues to follows me, and my older sister was with us, and my older sister could see how stressed I was. So she kind of just took the deaconess away. And then we dropped the sister home, and then like we came back that evening. But yeah, like my child cried all the way. Like she really, really hated. She hated church. And if we had stayed a little bit longer, they would have said, "Oh yeah, this child is possessed by Satan." So I didn't want to get to that stage.
They say that
So
about the kids.
yeah, because they had already said that to some members, kids that we were in the church of. And then so we got back, and then at that stage I was like, I can't do this to myself, and I also can't do it to my children. It's just like too much. And then so from that trip I didn't end up going to, like, I didn't go to the rest of the feast. I messaged her and I said, yep, I'm not gonna do the rest of the feast because it's too much for my child. And then they left it at that, because they knew that like they can't push me. Normally the more they push, the more I completely disappear. So they just like let me kind of. And then shortly after that I made the decision, right, to leave, because then I was trying to kind of like work something, and then like there was too much of a pushback. And then I just came to Pascal and I said, yeah, like I've made the decision not to, like, I'm not going to go to church anymore. So I'm going to communicate this to my family, and I'll communicate it to the church as well. And because Pascal knew what that means for me every time I leave, it's like, yeah, it's going to be confinement for all of us again. And he also knows that like it becomes very like I become very anxious after I leave, because then like I'm like, yeah, like now God's going to punish us. He will let us see the wrath basically while we are still alive. But yeah, like Pascal was worried what that would mean for me. So he said, yeah, like maybe take some times and then try to communicate things again. But yeah, like I knew that it was not a matter of communication. Like I can't really change the system pretty much. So shortly after that, I set my family down and I said to them, yeah, I'm leaving this time because I can't do it anymore. Like I now have like responsibility of looking after my kids. And I feel like if I don't leave this environment, like I would not be sane. And like I intend to be a present parent, but I don't see how I can do that as long as I'm in the church. Because I also knew down the line at some stage, and I've seen this done to so many other members, they take your authority away as a parent, and they pretty much like parent your children as like when you are in the church, and you would be told that, yeah, they are in the body of children, but their souls are still human souls. We still need to let them kind of like suffer in a way, because they would say to some members that because children cannot preach, their preaching and the way to gain blessing actually it's to go through the suffering of separating from the mom, so that mom can go preaching and kids can be abused in the kids room and things like this.
Oh my gosh.
So I really couldn't see that happening for my children. So I set my family down and I said, I'm doing this for me and for my children, and I know what that would mean for me. Like now we have totally two different destinations. And like I will handle whatever consequences that God will give me, but I don't see what God would punish me for choosing my children over this. Like I can't lose my sanity and not be present for my kids. Like I'm just going to remove myself from the situation, and yeah, whatever punishment God's give me at the end, like I will handle it, but I can't do this anymore. And they were sad, but they understood that like it's like, you know, it's your decision. They said, we'll just support you as much as we can. And I said, yeah, and I know it will impact our relationship as well, because like I'm now no longer, I'm planning to not be a member anymore. Sorry, I just froze a little bit. But yeah, and then I said, like, I'm making this decision this time as a final. I really don't want like what happens like every time I leave, you come back with disaster this, the end is this. Like I don't want to hear any of this. if it gives you any comfort, you can pray for me, but I really don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, let me just like do my things on this end. So yeah, like my family was sad, but they respected my decision. And then I went to them and I told them that this is the decision I made. And I said to them that I don't want any contact. If I ever change my mind in the future, like I know where to find them because my family is still going, but I really don't want any contact. And then they left me alone for about 2 months, and then they started rocking up, and Pascal was facing them. So yeah. Sorry.
How did he do that?
Very politely, because like I still didn't want to break anything that Flora didn't want me to break.
Okay.
But yeah, so at some point, like, you know, like Flora told me, okay, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. And the thing is that they came to us to sell us
the magazines.
things, but like it didn't.
The Alois magazine.
The lowest.
Yeah.
So they didn't say anything. They were just say, "Oh yeah, we just want to drop this to Flora." But like to me, it was like, okay, something that they drop. And then so they brought the magazine. So I took them, and then they reached out to Flora and say, "Hey, you know these magazines? Yeah, you still owe us money for this." I'm like, come on, man. So that, yeah. So from that point on, I told them, yeah, next time they come, I might burn their car.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see them.
I said
anymore.
to Pascal, please remember that my family still goes there. Like, don't put anybody up. Yeah, no, he didn't say that he might burn their car.
he thought it, I'm sure.
Like I will politely ask them to step away from my house, otherwise it's not gonna go down well. They might actually go to heaven sooner than they think.
Sooner than they're gonna be Ahnsahnghong sooner than they think. Yeah.
Oh man, the end is gonna be really near.
So you mentioned how'd you refer to it earlier as the magic moment or something like that, and then you said that was later on.
So yeah, once I made that decision and I spoke to them, I then had that anxiety for the 2 months, because then I was like, yeah, now I can no longer listen to the sermon because like I've decided to leave God. But then like I would attempt to pray, but I'm like, yeah, but like God is obviously not going to listen to my prayer. And then the magic.
Yeah, so because Flora had stopped watching the sermon on YouTube, so I think the algorithm, like Google is really smart, right? So the algorithm was like, oh, you're no longer watching these kind of videos. So usually people who stop watching these videos, they start watching those videos.
Great light to you.
So that's when like we started to see in our feed many, you know, ex-members videos popping, and but at the beginning, Flora didn't want to watch them.
Yeah.
But one day she watched one.
Because I recognized Michelle's face, and because I recognized the shenanigan that was done when she left.
Yeah, so we all started with Michelle because she was like the point of focus at church for a while. And then Flora recognized the face and she's like, nah, I'm not going to look at this. But in the end.
Yeah, so like I saw the video like for a whole week almost. It kept on popping up. And then I was like, yeah, this is definitely Satan.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. I should definitely stay away from it. But at the end, it was too tempting. I had to eat it.
How did it taste?
The one bite I took, I had to eat the whole apple. Like, there was no coming back.
No coming back.
Yeah, so I saw Michelle's face and I recognized her from back then. And I thought, it would make sense actually maybe to hear what she has to say, because I know that like she was presented back then as the Jezebel. She like destroyed her own marriage and like left, and like, yeah, in Australia it was so bad. They made me sound so horrible, the poor thing. So I thought, like I remember this face, like she was presented as a Jezebel back then. So I wanted to at least hear her story. I didn't really think that anything would come out of it, but I just wanted to simply hear her story. And because I think I was in this mindset by this point, that I should at least listen to other perspective. Like it might not change my mind at the end, but I should at least listen to other perspective. So then, yeah, I listened to the story, and by the end, it didn't actually tell me where, because she didn't talk much about the doctrines in that. It was really just like sharing her personal story. And I felt like, okay, like even if this is the truth, if this church actually treats people like this, I definitely don't want to be part of this environment, because it's not the kind of person that I am. It's not the kind of example that I want to show my kids. I don't want them to be around this example. And like, yeah, like I no longer want to have anything to do with it. So the very next day I called my sister, who was a deaconess, because in my mind, I think I thought like it's really scary to approach her because she's a bigger fish. But I thought, because she's always had influence on like the whole family. So I thought if I was to catch her as a bigger fish, I know she will take all the other little fish out. So like I approached my sister, and because like she's the closest one to me as well. So I said to her, yeah, I didn't actually go looking out for this video. It was just like brought to me, and I feel like, the universe wanted me to hear something, and I kept on avoiding it, but like the video kept on popping up, and I finally clicked on it, and now I understand actually why this video was brought to me, because it was a message that I needed to hear. And I said to her, yeah, like, do you remember like the time that this was said about her? But she didn't remember much, because it was mainly said to the youth. The study was done with the youth, so my sister didn't remember much, and it was the time that she was having kids, and she was also being punished and banished as well, so she was not super involved during that time. But I said to her, yeah, like I got to hear her side of story, and like after watching it, I realized that I never want to be part of this environment again. And I said, I know I left a little bit of hope when I spoke to you guys. I said, if I ever change my mind in the future, I might reach back. But like now I know I would never like come back to this place. And like my sister was really shocked, and she was surprised. And she said, yeah, like I'm surprised that, you finally went to the internet, because like we know what father and mother say. But anyway, like it's what's done, it's already done. And like, I'm sorry that you heard about her sad story, basically. And then, yeah, we just left it at that. And then I binge watch all the interviews. And the other person that I really related with, I can't remember her name, but she spoke about how she adopted her niece, I think after her sister or brother passed. And then the niece was used against her to say that, yeah, like Satan is using the niece to pull on your heartstrings, basically. And I related so much to that video because of at some stage they had to track back a little bit. Before I made that decision, the final straw really that broke the camel back for me was when they came and had the conversation about that trip for me to the church. And the sister said at the time, Satan used our most precious, in this situation, in your case, is kids, to pull our heartstring. She said, if Satan was to use like some stranger, you're not going to care. But if they use your children to pull your heartstring, you will think that you are doing it for your children. You want to stay with them and make them comfortable, but it's actually Satan using her in this case. But I said to her, that doesn't make sense to me, because actually I was not putting my kids in the car and going to some kids' party. We were actually going to church. So I don't know why God would test me when I'm already making the effort to go and keep the Passover. Like it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for me at that stage. So yeah, I really related to that video because of like this thing that happened to me personally. And then I thought, oh my gosh, so it's not just me. Because at some stage I was telling Pascal, am I overreacting? That, I decided to leave church because of like this conversation. And like he was saying, yeah, like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's not really fair that, they use our kids to control to tell you, to try and get you to be more committed to your faith, basically. Because I felt like, yeah, I think I'm a little bit overreacting kind of. But when I heard her story, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, so I'm not the only one. Like, it's a systematic thing. And then like I heard everybody else, and then when he started to get into the doctrine, the fear like just flew away. Like I'm like, yep, I'm not just gonna drive around on Saturday. I'm even gonna party and
Yeah.
What was the particular doctrines, like the was there anything in particular that helped change your mind about it?
it was the fact that the church name was changed so many times,
Mm-hmm.
and like the split that happened between like the Church of God and the New Covenant Church of God. I
Mm-hmm.
at some point I think I heard that Ahnsahnghong's son
Yes.
separated from the church and like he was like a false prophet or something. So I never looked into that. But yeah, like for me, it was that like the fact that the church name was changed so many times and we never heard anything about this. Like Zhang Gil Jah's history a little bit. The fact that
Ahnsahnghong was eating cake, attending parties.
Yes. out at camp and like swimming and
The phone call with
the phone
Zhang Gil
call.
Jah.
Oh my gosh,
I love
the
you.
phone call.
I love you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
With Diane Sims, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the
it's pretty
whole
rough.
thing was dismantled. Like I feel like what I tried to build for 14 years that I never reached the ultimate faith was dismantled within like 20 minutes of that phone call.
But it's
Yeah.
crazy. And the like some of stories of sexual abuse as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't remember. Are you talking about like the that was a Netflix thing? It's like
No.
No. There's
Yeah, like,
I know the cases you're talking about where it's through the arranged marriages,
yeah.
where things are forced upon people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the story like really changed the game for us. Like it was, I couldn't listen to the whole explain the story without like having to pause because like I felt like I was hyper ventilating. Like that's how bad it was for me. Explain the story. Oh my goodness, we had to pause it, like brainstorm, have conversations in between, and then go back to like the story. Like explain the story was too much.
Okay, so I'm pretty up to date with all my podcasts. Like I love listening to podcasts and stuff, so I'm pretty up to date. And I was listening to Esperanza's stories while driving, and when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I need to call Flora to tell her not to listen to it if she's not ready because like it's super intense.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Not knowing that
she kind of even like doesn't go into the darkest details of it. It's left somewhat vague, but you get the idea, and it's definitely that was impactful.
The fact that it's like that person is still like around and like
being elevated in the church too.
Elevated, like it was like wow. I mean, to some extent, because like these kind of stories or similar stories also happen in the Catholic Church. Like it's famous for that. To some extent, I understand that. The punishment, like if you're like a truly religious person, the only true punishment that you will respect is the punishment from God, not the punishment from man. So to some extent, I understand why they don't ban the people, but at the same time, to promote them and to give them more responsibility and more power, like to me, that's it's kind of like it's very twisted.
Yeah.
So, Flora, you had mentioned that you sent the video that you had seen over to your sister with Michelle Colon. After you had left, after you started to feel better about your decision through videos and hearing other testimonies of what people have experienced and what they've come to learn about the church history, the church doctrine. Once this information that they tried to hide from members was revealed to you, this other perspective, because unless they approve the information, they don't let you see it.
Yeah.
What was the next step for both you and your family?
Yeah, so the Michelle one, actually, I didn't send it to her. I just told her from that point on, and we left the conversation like that. And then as I was listening to, at this stage, I had switched over to the traffic,
Playing in
traffic. And the first interview I listened to was by missionary Emma, I think.
Yes.
And missionaries Emma's story like sounded almost identical to my sister's story, like my older sister. Like I lingered over really sharing that with her because I was like, if she listened to this story, there is no denying. Because like I can already relate the story to her so much, like she will definitely relate it back to herself. So then I sent her the link. I said to her, yeah, I listened to this podcast. I couldn't really deny the fact that it was so close to your story. You don't have to listen to it. This is just an information that I found. I thought I would share the link to you. Do what you will with it, basically. And then shortly after that, I felt really bad. And I thought, like, even though I didn't go out actually looking for information, like the universe brought this information to me. So I should trust the universe would do the right thing to my sister and like not trying to influence her. So I sent her a message and I said, I'm really sorry that I sent that to you. Because like for me, it felt like that's what Pascal did for me all these years. Like just with patience and with support and with love, he just led me until I made the decision for myself. So I didn't feel like he influenced my decision in any way. He never tried to go and look for information and then say, yeah, I found this and that about your church. So I felt like the support I received, I want to be able to give that to my sister as well. So I sent her the message and I said, I'm really sorry. I should trust actually that the universe will do the right thing for you. Disregard that information if disregard that link basically. And then she said, oh no, that's okay. Like it's fine. I'm just like sitting on whether I should click it or not. Like I'm just lingering in that basically. But yeah, like thank you for sharing it with me. Just give me the time because I'm just like trying to decide like what to do. So it took her 2 days before she clicked the link, and that's it. She made the turn just from just that one podcast itself.
Wow.
So then she called me back and she said, yeah, like for so many months now, because my sister had a position in the church, so she was a deaconess, and she was in Melbourne church. She was the only deaconess that had kids, or that like was a married woman with kids. All the other deaconess, like no one had children. So she had always experienced more things than the other deaconess because like the kids were always like part of her. Like it was not just her basically, and like ignore the husband at home. Like in her case, it was like the kids. So I think she experienced things that the other deaconesses that without kids didn't experience. And so she said, yes. So for many months, I've seen and heard things because obviously, like the more position you have, maybe, and Anthony, you would have been exposed to maybe more things than I was exposed to. Because in my case, I only made it to like unit leader, and then they were like, yeah, nah, this lady, we can't control her. Take the leadership away from her. So it was snatched before I even like realized it. So because she had the leadership and like she got really close with the overseer and his wife, so she saw more things. And she said, for many months now, I've seen and heard things that I could never unheard or unsee, but I just didn't know how to go about it. And that video just put everything into perspective, like connected all the dots. And of course, she found herself in a rabbit hole. And that whole week or 2 weeks or whatever, like we were in a limbo. So yeah, like she's also so up to date with the Great Light Studio. And towards the end, because I think maybe they can also sense when you are on your way out, kind of. So they got her to sign the NDA without even her realizing. The paper was just brought and put on the table, and the overseer told her to sign it. And then after she signed it, she said, oh, what is it? And he said, oh, all the unit and group leaders need to sign it. Then later she found out that it was actually NDA. Yes, NDA.
Yeah.
So like she really wanted to share her story now, but she's still dealing with with that first.
I see.
So yeah.
How many total years were you in the WMS as a member? Not excluding the times that you left, because that you were basically still a member even in those moments where you, I mean, at least it would seem from my vantage point, because you were still controlled by the doctrine enough so that you eventually went back. So like the total span of years, how much was
almost
that?
15 years. Almost 15.
Okay. And then how long since you left?
I left in April 2023. 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 2 years.
Yeah, almost 2 years now.
Okay. So
but
how
even
has the
left those 3 times, it was like 2 months maximum.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how has life been since leaving, and how has your healing process been? And I'm sure there's things that you probably still, I would think possibly, or I guess I'll put this as a question. Are there things that you still struggle with or are wrestling through, working through with it? And yeah, so just talk a little bit about the healing process and how all that's going.
Of course. Do you want to take this one? Or you want me to take it?
But like, yeah, I mean, I can start, and then you, yeah. So like, as we were like, as we started that podcast, or this video, this interview, like it kind of, like I now see this as a silent disease. Like nobody talks about it, but it's there. Like so many people are affected by it, and basically that's also why the work that you guys are doing is like super important, helping like all these stories to be like surfaced and like spread like to like a wider community, so that like people can now identify and see like the connecting points and see how, you know, like there's a way to detach themselves from the doctrine. Because I think that like the difficult part is not so much like leaving the church, like the physical building, but it's also like leaving the church mentally, and like completely stepping away from this doctrine and this mindset. But this being said, finding the right support, finding the right specialist is also like super difficult. And yeah, as Flora mentioned before, like we haven't found like a support group like locally, or even like at the scale of the country. This is something that's missing. And yeah, I suppose, yeah. So now you can share the things that you're still struggling with, and
which is a lot. Yeah, so when I first left, I think the first big relief was the guilt was just like removed almost like overnight. So I didn't feel that guilt anymore, which like I didn't actually realize how much weight it was putting on me, but I just felt like so light. And all these years, I guess in the church, because like for me, like I was brought up by parents that were entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurship is something that I saw myself doing. Like I identified as an entrepreneur, and I knew that it was the way I want to structure my life. Basically, is to start a business and like work for myself. So it's something I've attempted throughout the years, but the church will quickly shut it down because they knew how much work would go into like starting a business. So it was also one of the things that soured my relationship with my family, because they did it through a family. So like my mom would like drop, like every time I had attempted to start businesses while I was in the church, and like my mom would give me comments that would really make me be overwhelmed with guilt and let go of the business basically. So because it was something that I was really eager on doing, as soon as I left the church and like the guilt went away, I was like, oh, like finally I can now do my business properly. So like I jumped into like I jumped into starting a business. So I started a business pretty much like I think a month or two after I left the church, like my food blog. So I just threw myself into business, and I think that, like, even when I binge watch and listen to everything, it was to make sense of like what happened. And like once I knew that, okay, like the whole thing was a lie, I kind of just like put it behind me and I threw myself into business, and I just got so busy like for almost like a whole year. And then things started to resurface because I never dealt with it. Yeah, I never dealt with it. I just put it behind me. So this year, like things started to come back up, and so I picked up Stephen Hassan's book again, and like this time I'm like seeing it with a different perspective because I've given myself the time now to like heal a little bit as well, and like my body physically had gone through a little bit more healing than when I first came out. So I'm really starting to see things in a different light. And at some stage when I was rereading the book, I really wanted to understand, like, what was it that, that got me into the church? What did they see in me? Like, why did I stay all this time? Even though like my instinct kept on telling me that something was wrong, like, why didn't I have the courage to leave? And the most important thing for me, I think I wanted to avoid not ever falling into something like that again. So I knew that it was important that I do the work, and for me to really identify what a cult is, so that I can also teach my children to avoid this kind of danger. So I knew that for me to get to that stage, I needed to deal with my own thing first. So as I was reading the book, it started to feel like it was so, like, I think the church, the like what I experienced in the church was like a lot more intensified than what I grew up with, but it felt like it was a behavior that was already like in our household, kind of. As I mentioned before, like my mom is a very strong personality, like, she ruled with like power in the house, kind of. So like the behaviors of the, like some of the comments that the church members would make were things that were made kind of like at home. So I started to feel like it felt like I was already like in a small cult before I got into a cult, kind of. So I think it took me down the line of having to deal with the childhood trauma, to then understanding like the trauma that I also like picked up in the church. So at that stage, I started to see a therapist to like help me to like really connect all the points. So when I went to see a therapist, then that's when we realized that, because I guess maybe because here in Australia people live a cult and they don't talk about it, so it feels like even like professionally there's no much knowledge about it. So it felt like she couldn't really help me because she had no much understanding about the situation. And
and
like,
and and it's actually sometimes, I wouldn't say like dangerous, but like because of her lack of perspective, she might come across,
as judging,
yeah, a little bit like judgy.
because yeah, she asked me at some stage, like, what I don't understand is, like, if like the church is that abusive, why did you stay all this time? I'm like, yeah, why do you think I'm here?
Where did she get her degree?
Yeah, that's
Because would you
Yeah.
ask somebody in any other abusive
Yeah.
relationship that kind of question? Wow.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. So
that's an ignorant question, unfortunately.
Yeah.
yeah, so it started to feel a bit judgy, I guess. But yeah, like I think because we also started like in the healing journey, I felt like Pascal has been with me all along. Not just as like supporting me, but he's also doing his own education on his side. He's like listening to podcasts, readings. So we'll come back together and we'll brainstorm and we'll talk about basically, yeah, like how I experience things in the church. And like sometimes they would come up in our life, basically, like we would be having like difficulties to communicate. And like now, because I'm in the process of really like understanding like childhood trauma, the trauma in the church, I'm able to then connect our miscommunication, sometimes connect it back to that. So like recently, yeah, like we had like we were butting head about something, and then like we went away, and like I was able to then reflect on it, and I came back and I said, yeah, I can't remember what it was actually. It would be really good to remember the actual
No, I don't know
story.
what you were referring
But
to.
yeah, I was able to come back to Pascal and say, yeah, like I'm able to now connect it, because in the church I was like, I'm just trying to remember because it was really good that I was able to connect it and see where it was coming from. So in our like day life, like things will come up, and like now a lot of times I'm able to relate back to the church. I think maybe it was.
But I think yeah, it's just like things that can be triggering.
Yes.
You know, and like and sometimes you don't always know where his trigger is coming from.
I remember other example. So I was walking to the shop, and I was like, I had my kids and my niece in the car, and I was like walking to the shop to get something quickly and come back, because I had like the kids and the teenager in the car. And one of the sale people stopped me, and like I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, like I just need to make a run, my kids are in the car. And like he was a little bit pushy, and I was so triggered in the moment. I said, yeah, like I can't, I can't do it at this stage. So I ended up running back, but I felt bad because I felt like I was a bit like mean, like it felt like mean, at least for my own personality. So I came back. I said to him, I'm really sorry. I'm just like in a rush. I would perhaps maybe next time I'll listen a little bit, but I'm really triggered by these kind of things, like anything salesy, especially like if it's a bit of a pushy over sale. I said to him, yeah, I was like in a cult for some times, and I recently came out. So like this thing is really triggering for me. It's like, it's nothing against you. And then he was like, oh yeah, like what happened? But I didn't have time to explain it to him. So I was like, yeah, I can't get into it now. But bye, basically. And then I got into the car, and like I kept on thinking about like this interaction, and it felt like this kind of simple things now, it's so triggering, because it just reminds me of how we used to preach to people, and how
Yes.
even if you are sitting down having a conversation with them, as you are trying to explain your point, they would jump in and they would say, oh yeah, but sister, this is not a heavenly mind, like you are thinking now of a human, like as a human being, and all these things. So it like definitely, yeah, like these small things are coming, but
yeah, it's actually hard to navigate, because the thing is, it's you have like a spectrum of ways you can use like principles. The way I see it is more like let's say a strawberry jam. So like strawberry jam is good, like most people love it, but like if you abuse it, at some point it be like you start feeling like this complete rejection towards it, and like from that point on, you can't have strawberry jam anymore. And to you, anytime someone mentions strawberry jam, it's like, oh yeah, okay, like don't talk to me about it. But it doesn't change the fact that if you use it cautiously and with the right amount, it's actually a good thing.
Sorry, I remember the example. Do I have time to explain it quickly?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually with the therapist. So I had a session, and I came out of that session feeling like very heavy hearted. And then I came home, and I pretty much like cried to Pascal, because like I was of what I was feeling from that from the session. So because of like the session previously, she had asked me that question, which I felt judged by, and I immediately withdrew. Like I was no longer open to express. So then I came back and I brainstormed with Pascal, and Pascal said, yeah, have a conversation with her, and like let her know basically that at this stage maybe it would make sense that you work with someone that has some experience with ex-members, someone called survivors. So I went in there actually prepared to have that conversation with her, and like I felt like the conversation was going well. I explained myself. I let her know that like because on my end I'm doing work, but I feel like someone who has an understanding can then help me to connect the points. And then she said, but that's what we're already doing here. Like, why do you feel like you need to go and do, like, why do you feel like you just need to do more and more and more, kind of? So anyway, in that whole conversation, it felt like she gaslit me. And I ended up leaving that conversation feeling very defeated. And then I got into the car and I came and I had the conversation at home with Pascal, and I said, but I feel like I overreacted a little bit, because that's how it was in the church. You would go there knowing that you're on the right, but they would turn the whole thing and gaslight you, and then you would feel like you were the one on the wrong.
Yeah.
So on this particular time, Pascal said, no, you are not. Like, you went, you explained, you put everything on the table, and basically she did what you were telling her that the church was doing all this time. So, like, it's not you, like, you did the right thing, but it was still very hard for me to not take it as like my own fault. Because
they trained you to be like that.
Yeah. It's something I find really hard now to not gaslight myself. Like, I find that even if I know I'm on the right and I'm just having like a discussion, like a disagreement with someone, I would know that I'm on the right, but I would still feel like maybe like I should be a little bit more understanding. I should be a little bit more like, I don't need to pick on everything. I need to maybe let some things go, or things like this. So this is something I definitely still struggle with, of like, communicating myself clearly without feeling like I'm being too much, because it's what I was told for so long that, like, I was told that, that like when leaders are rebuking me, I shouldn't try to explain myself. I shouldn't try to talk back, basically. But then I'd be like, but like, at least let me explain what happened, and then you can draw the conclusion from that point on. And like, after
that.
just to not make it go into an argument, I would just like sit through things, but I still couldn't, because like my personality still wanted to like to still have a say. So like, I still have a say now, but I still feel a lot of guilt about it, that, oh, maybe I should have just let this go.
Those things linger. Sometimes, like, you've been trained, and it shows up in different ways for different people. It seems like yours might be like personal interactions. I know some people get it in the way that like they were busy every day and now they need to stay busy all the time, because but it manifests in different ways for different people. But I definitely it's good that you made that first step with therapy. It's unfortunate that the first person maybe wasn't well equipped to handle your particular needs and situation. I would hope that a professional would also be able to identify that, but it doesn't seem like maybe they had that. Maybe they did therapy themselves, but
that's my biggest.
Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. So that's the thing I didn't understand, because like from like the first session, actually, she could have said, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not trained for this particular thing. We can have like a few more sessions just to like define like the perimeter of like, what kind of support you need, and I can connect you with someone who has like this kind of training and knowledge. But like it didn't happen. And I think like listening to like the podcast and like the books and stuff, like it feels like someone who has maybe experience or specific training in domestic violence might be able to relate a little bit better. To
Absolutely.
like the cult and like mind control and all this kind of stuff.
So do you guys see any professionals in Australia here that like Steve Hassan version, kind of?
I wish I did. That's something I wish we had some some people on standby, sort of. It'd be nice to have some connections there that we could point people to. But yeah, I don't know. Do you know of any, Anthony?
I mean, even on the U.S. side of things, I'm not too familiar with it being a very large niche of therapy. However, I believe that Tony from Playing in Traffic, I think she might actually have a connection.
Yeah. She told us she found someone that she's working with, like that's really good and has
from
like
Australia.
No, but in the US, yeah.
But maybe that would be a good source. Maybe they have some sort of counterpart in Australia. So
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say I'm glad you had Pascal through all that, and especially even down to him helping you navigate this therapy session with a therapist who I think definitely wasn't going to be beneficial to you or your needs. But it sounds to me like you have I even appreciate the, what you've already pointed out, what we see this over and over again. Just, I think that he wasn't pushing you or nagging you about the church. He wasn't, trying to push you out of it, but just the patience, I think, and the constant love and acceptance of you through all that. I think, again, we get that question all the time. What can I do to get my daughter, my son, my husband, my mom, whatever it is, out of the church? And the only consistent answer I've seen that actually seems to have, long-term positive effects is just the simple, maybe somewhat frustrating answer of just be patient and love them and be there for them. And just, I think, take a few steps back, I think in many cases, from that inclination that I think is so easy to have, that we just want to shake them and, say, wake up, because so often that's the WMS trains members so that not only is that most oftentimes not going to work, it's actually going to drive them deeper in and further away. And I think it's just so hard to avoid that. And that's why I hope people who are maybe in that situation can get some encouragement and maybe a little bit of wisdom even from Pascal's example and how he handled it. Because I think it went a long way in not pushing you further away from him and further into the church, but gave you that space to kind of figure things out and make that decision to leave on your own.
That's true. But I think that's why we also want, like, for me, it was important that Pascal comes along, because it feels like he was such a big part of my journey that I was able to finally leave because of like the small comments that he made over the years that put some sense into me. Like, and even like when he would comment on things, like it would always come with so much grace that it was hard for me to take offense at.
Thank you.
But
not always, but like I tried.
Yeah.
But it was like sowing seeds that in my mind, like I was able to go back with and think and think of, like it actually makes sense. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This shouldn't happen. And like few times it turned into an argument, because then he would try to point something out and then like I would attack and he would attack back. But majority of the comments that he made, it was with so much grace that they were able to actually stay as a seed. And
but at the same time, like it is the circumstance is important as well, because Flora also was reading books. We were like in that stage where, like, because like if I try to plant a seed on the, I mean, you guys are
on the rocky path or in the
so the soil has to be
ready to receive.
Ready to receive the seeds and.
It's that's why we always share our story together, because we want to give both perspective, and we also want to like let the family and the love members, the loved one, know that, as you said, it might come out as a little bit like frustrating, but like just with love and patience, like in due time, because like it's not sustainable actually to stay in that church forever. Like in due time, what they will fall back on are all these like comments that brings them back to reality that they heard from their loved ones.
Yeah, but I think the most important thing is to stay in contact.
Mm-hmm.
Like we saw it like recently in the Netflix thing, 9M.
Yeah. 7M.
7M. Like the dancing thing. I don't know if you and the fact that there was absolutely no communication with the family. I think that it was really tough. But staying in touch, being patient. And
I mean, if they're your partner, you have no option but to stay in touch.
Like, unfortunately,
the patience part is the more voluntary aspect of it.
We hear story about a couple who split.
Yeah.
So like you have
but if they want to, if they
no, but it's like it has to come from, if it's coming from a place of love, like you'll find a way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, wow, 15 years. That's a long time. That might be the record. I can't remember if I'm forgetting somebody that we've interviewed who's been in there longer, but I don't know if you can think of somebody, Anthony, that I don't know that
that might be a record.
That might be a record.
17 for my sister, for my oldest sister, so 17 years.
We're gonna send you our address so you can send the trophy.
We'll send you the trophy. Yeah, we'll send you a president's award or whatever it is.
We'll send you the LOS and then charge you for it later.
There you go. Yeah. That's amazing, by the way. It's just there's so many little things like that. It's just there aren't even words. It's just like it's just social complete lack of awareness and on so many levels. But I have. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying it's just the usual thing. Once we left, they were like, they were never committed. That girl was a rebel from day one. That's why I couldn't see heaven.
Yes.
Now she dragged the whole family out, and they were not committed anyway. Like just the usual thing.
Yeah, they like to talk about slanderers, but they're the ones who commit the most slander against people who leave. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
They are the kings at slander. Yeah. Well, I have my babysitter waiting for me, so but Anthony, I don't know if you have any final questions before we wrap this up. This has been great, by the way.
Yeah. I would just say, like, if there's a message that you guys individually have for people who are on the fence of whether or not they want to stay, they want to go, they're scared, they don't know if they leave, if they're getting a car accident or what's going to be waiting for them on the other side. They're stuck with fear. What do you guys, any recommendations for those members who are on the verge?
Your family loves you.
Yeah, it's true.
They will be there, like because they know that, like like the tension between yourself and them is probably coming from that cult or mind control group or whatever, but they do love you, and as soon as you reach out, they will welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, and on my end, I guess as an ex-member, I would say, like, I think to repair ourself once we come out, like, because for so many years we've actually neglected our health, to like look after your health, to recover and come back and stay connected, as Pascal say, reconnect with like old friends, old family members, and educate yourself, because like if we don't actually educate ourselves, there is a chance of falling into something else. It might not be Church of God, but there is a chance of falling into like another mind control relationship, group, and things like that. So I think like really developing ourselves personally from this stage on, it's like so important. And as they say, like fool me once and shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So I think it's really our responsibility to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again, and like to share stories. And we found that even like among our friendship group, like sometimes they will actually give like some ignorant questions, and like you would be asked questions that are triggering, but also understand that like people are not also aware, like have grace for your family and friends, and take this opportunity to educate them instead, so that they can also avoid the situation. But yeah, like we really found sharing our story very healing. So like at some stage when people are ready, they should really make this step of sharing it with at least like loved ones, someone that they trust. But it's so important to like to voice it, like to verbalize it out.